For the first time after many years that I appear in this cozy room in the capacity of guest speaker and not of a regular performer whose duty is to stuff the mental food down the throat of his victims, whether they like it or not. The course in engineering geology, which starts today, forms part of your training and a very essential part in the broader field of earthwork engineering. In order to realize the function of engineering geology in earthwork engineering, it is useful to go back to its origins. Those engineers who started their professional career some 20 or 25 years ago may have the impression that engineering geology represents the latest development in the field of soil mechanics. In reality, just the opposite is true. Because soil mechanics, because engineering geology preceded soil mechanics by more than 1 century. You can learn this fact by opening any one of the textbooks on foundation engineering or on earthwork engineering in general, which has been published prior to about 1920. There you will find that the subsurface materials have been divided into several categories, into fine sand, coarse sand, silt, stiff and soft clay, weathered rock, and sound rock, and the like. And to each one of these categories was assigned a simple empirical relationship or rule for design. Foremost among these rules were the tables for allowable soil pressure, the rules for selecting the slopes on fields, the procedures for designing the supports in tunnels, and the like. Theoretical procedures for design did not exist, with 2 exceptions. One of these exceptions was the theory of earth pressure, and the other one, the theory of the distribution of stresses under loaded areas. The theory of earth pressure has originated about 1780. It was published by Coulomb. Yet, it was 100 years still after the publication of Coulomb's paper that a most prominent and experienced engineer, Mr. Benjamin Baker, rejected quite emphatically the use of these theories in connection with practical problems in a paper which is now considered as a classic. It was read before the Institution of Civil Engineers in London. And as far as Boussinesq's theory is concerned, which originated in 1880, that theory was not used at all by any engineer, for the simple reason because at the state of knowledge between 1880 and about 1920, nobody could have done anything with it. As a consequence, up to about 1920, practically all decisions and all designs in the field of earthwork engineering were based on engineering geology. And the geologists were very keenly aware of this fact. It has been expressed by a 19th century geologist, the geologist who made the preliminary investigations for the St. Gotthard tunnel in Switzerland. He expressed the fact in the following words. He says, every civil engineer is engaged in experimental geology without being conscious of these facts and without being spoiled by the recognition of the benefits which the science of geology has derived from these activities. On account of the prominent role of engineering in the design of earth structures and of in the decisions concerning large excavations, every important project was started with a thorough geological survey. And the publications of the results of these surveys are still today a very valuable source of information. I wish to quote a few and other publications of stuff concerning the geology at the site of the St. Gotthard Tunnel, which was built about 1872 to 1880. The geological investigations of the site of the Simplon Tunnel in Switzerland, and then of the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal in Germany, which was opened for traffic about in 1890. Furthermore, the first geological map was prepared and published by civil engineer William Smith in 1815, and not by geologists. And the first textbook on engineering geology was published as early as 1875. And in 1905, when I started in my professional career, the training of every student in civil engineering included a course in geology. And as far as I'm concerned, when I entered practice, I knew very much more about that subject than most of my colleagues, because geology was, from my very early age, my hobby. Yet as soon as I was confronted with practical problems, I realized that the benefits to be derived from a geology which I knew and which I was taught are largely imaginary. I entered the services of the contractor, and in rapid succession, I experienced one major failure after another. First of all, the failure of the foundation of a large factory building near Vienna. Then came a huge landslide which descended into our foundation pit for a construction of a concrete gravity dam in Transylvania. Then the failure of a pressure tunnel on the same project. Then the failure of a dam by piping in the Eastern Alps. Nobody was blamed, and these accidents had even an official name. They were called acts of God. That is a name which was always used during the lawsuit which followed the incident. And the blame was non-existent, but at the same time the incidents were embarrassing and costly for everybody concerned. From these experiences, I concluded erroneously that these mishaps could be avoided by refinement in the method of geological site investigation. And I decided to concentrate on engineering geology. In 1911, I gave up a lucrative job as chief engineer of a contracting firm in Europe and went to the United States with the intention to study the performance of soils and rocks at the dam site of the U.S. Reclamation Service, which at that time was engaged in the construction of a great number of irrigation dams in the western United States, and to analyze the observed performance in the light of engineering geology. Before I embarked on that adventure, I called Mr. F.H. Newell in Washington, D.C., who was at that time the director of the Reclamation Service, and since he shared my views, he gave me wholehearted support. The results of 2 years of hard labor in the field were so disappointing that I did not even care to publish any of the results of my observations. But at the same time, I realized, and for the first time clearly, the crucial deficiency of engineering geology. This deficiency resides in the fact that every one of the terms which you find in the geological report applies to materials with widely different engineering properties. For instance, a sand is designated in these reports on the basis of prevalent grain size. This sand can be loose or dense, highly permeable or slightly permeable. And these properties, which are of paramount importance from an engineering point of view, are not mentioned at all. Or clay was classified on the basis of its consistency. Yet nobody knew about the fact that a clay can be sensitive or insensitive, which makes a world of a difference, and the terms which were used for designating consistency were so vague that they left a wide margin for interpretation. The influence of humidity or water on the stability of slopes was ascribed to the lubricating action of the water. But as soon as I started experimenting with that time, I found out that this lubricating effect does not exist. As a matter of fact, a certain quantity of water added to a sand even increases its shearing resistance instead of reducing it. Furthermore, cohesive soils, such as clay, contain always, and under any circumstances, below a depth of a few feet below the surface, water to such an extent that their voids are completely filled, so that a distinction between a lubricated and non-lubricated state cannot be made. On the other hand, I found out that the shearing resistance of soils depends to a large extent on the pore water pressure or on the pressure which acts in the water contained in the voids of the soil, and the concept of pore water pressure did not exist, and as a consequence, nobody suspected that this factor could have an important influence. Therefore, it became obvious that the conventional engineering geology had already reached the limits of its usefulness in about 1900, and that further progress called for procedures for expressing the engineering properties of geological materials by numerical values. I thought that this would be an easy matter. I started my investigations in 1917 in Istanbul, and I believe that I could complete them within about 2 years, whereupon I could return with clear conscience into engineering practice. In reality, I had to spend 7 years of hard labor on that task, the primitive laboratory, and with a very limited amount of library facilities at my disposal. In 1925, I published my findings in a book, Soil Mechanics. That is the time when the word soil mechanics came into existence. After publication of that book, I was invited to lecture on the topic of the book at MIT. That gave me an opportunity to reach a broader audience and to practice the principles of soil mechanics under very diversified geological conditions. Since soil mechanics satisfied a need which was felt by practically every engineer engaged in earthwork engineering. The habit of studying soil mechanics spread within a decade all over the United States. First came the Bureau of Public Roads. Shortly after my arrival in the States, I was requested by the Bureau to join them in the capacity of a consultant, and I continued this capacity until 1929. Next came the U.S. Army engineers under the stimulating influence of Professor Terzaghi, who started his teaching activities about in 1929, and finally came the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. After the International Conference on Soil Mechanics and Foundation Engineering in 1936 in Cambridge, similar movements and developments started on all the other continents as well. On account of the great variety of practical applications of soil mechanics, it became necessary to develop new techniques for subsoil exploration and testing. Foremost among them were the procedures for securing undisturbed samples, the techniques of penetration tests in drill holes, and the development of tools and means for measuring pore water pressure in the subsoil. The use of the advanced techniques soon disclosed the fact that the occurrence of homogeneous strata of great thickness and extent is extremely rare, much rarer than I suspected at the outset. And if the pattern of a body of soil is erratic, the results of boring and of soil tests leave a wide margin for interpretation, even in the event that the holes are closely spaced. The results of borings and of tests can be intelligently correlated and used for the construction of geological and soil profiles only by geological means and on the basis of geological reasoning. On account of this fact, our interest returns to geology, but this time on a very much higher plane. In order to illustrate the benefits which can be derived from engineering geology at the present state of our knowledge, I will tell you the following example. It was in 1943. One of the large lumber companies in Canada decided to put up a pulp and paper mill on the west coast of Vancouver Island. The site was located near the north tip of a low peninsula on the south shore of a narrow estuary. The project called for covering the site with a layer of fill in a thickness of about 10 feet. The borings were made to a depth of 80 feet, and they showed that the subsoil to this depth consists of silt, fine silty sand, and with increasing depth the material became coarser and coarser, and finally at the depth of about 70 feet they had reached a coarse and dense sand. Therefore, they intended to establish their factory on point-bearing piles, which are driven to a soft top strata into the layer of firm sand. Before construction was started, I was called to comment on this project. On the basis of my knowledge of the geology of that region and of its geological history, I concluded that the sand rests most likely at a depth of about 100 feet on a thick stratum highly compressible clay. And that the presence of this stratum would cause unequal settlement up to about 2 feet, which for a pulp and paper mill is intolerable. Borings which were made after I had submitted my report actually disclosed the presence of this stratum at a depth of about 95 feet, and its thickness exceeded 40 feet. On the account of the findings, it was necessary at the last moment, all the detailed plans were already prepared to shift the site to the root of the peninsula over a distance of about 3,000 feet, where that lower clay stratum was absent. 50 years ago, the knowledge of the existence of a stratum of clay at the depth of 100 feet would have been worthless, because no engineer would have expected that the presence of the stratum at that depth could conceivably have a significant influence on the performance of a structure resting on the surface. However, today, we not only are aware of the practical consequences of geological facts like the presence of this stratum, that we are even in a position to express the effects of such strata on the performance of the factory numerically. This example illustrates the difference between the benefits to be derived from engineering geology in 1900 and at the present day. The type of information furnished by geology has not changed, but its usefulness has vastly increased because engineers have developed means for eliminating the uncertainties associated with geological terms, and they have learned to predict the performance of the materials of the earth on the basis of the laws of the mechanics of solids and of hydraulics. In my own practice, which covers now half a century and 4 continents, I have never encountered a major engineering problem which could be solved either by geology or by solid mechanics alone. The solution always requires both domains of knowledge. The course of engineering geology, which I have laid out during the last decade, consists of 2 parts. The first part deals with the elements of physical geology. It is covered by some standard textbooks on physical geology and supplemented by a demonstration of the most important rocks and rock-forming minerals in the Department of Geology. The lectures really serve to call your attention to those aspects of general geology which are of outstanding engineering importance. These lectures, some of them will be given by Mr. Karl, and some of them by my wife, who has learned engineering geology the hard way in the field on 3 continents and under the impatient guidance of her husband. The second part deals with the influence of geological factors on engineering operations such as subsoil exploration and tunneling. The principal object of the course is to open your eyes to the influence of the geological factors on engineering operations in general and to the benefits to be derived from geological reasoning. If you succeed in grasping the importance of that influence, your interest and competence in engineering geology will steadily increase, because your course will have given to you a permanent and very powerful incentive for observation in the field. earthwork engineering because most failures in this field are due to ignoring the consequences of geological factors and not to errors in computation.